We're going to now turn our attention to another archaic temple. This one, though, is a little different. This is the temple of Aphaia at a place called Aegina, Greece. This is an island sort of off the coast of Athens. This is also an island where some of the heroes figured into the story of the Trojan War. So the imagery that we're going to see here at this temple of Aphaia depicts a story of a battle from the Trojan War, which is appropriate for this location. But what makes this important is not the story that the statue on this temple tells, but how it tells it. So we're going to be looking at the pediment. The pediment is, once again, the triangular area at either end of a peripteral style temple. And it is often the most common source of, or one of the most common places where architecture is going to, or where sculpture is going to be put. If in your readings in your book you read about a temple at Corfu, and you read about how the placement of the figures in the pediment was awkward. Some of them were made very tiny to fit in sort of the corners here. Some of them were larger. So you had all these different size figures. But the sculptors of Aphaia figured out a way by positioning the figures in different ways to have them fit more organically. So both ends of the temple pretty much tell the same story, but they tell them in significantly different ways. Each end of the temple was made something around 10 years apart from each other. There was construction on the temple was slowed down for a while due to war, and so during that 10-year period, there were tremendous changes in Greece. And so we are going to explore that because we are seeing a work of art that shows us the transition between this earlier archaic period and the later what is known as the classical period. So we're looking at the image of two dying warriors. And if you look at the image on the top, you can see, first off, there should be no doubt in your mind we're looking at an archaic sculpture. Why? Well, there's that archaic face. There's that archaic smile that you've now heard about a million times. There's those sort of bulging eyes. To give this statue a sense of life, to give it a sense of well-being. Although this is a sculpture that is not in a state of well-being. This is a sculpture showing a soldier that is dying. So we can look at some of the innovations that the Greek sculptors have been perfecting throughout the archaic period. And if you look especially in the body, you can see by the time we get to this very late archaic sculpture that the artists have become expert at depicting human anatomy. We see muscles designed in a very realistic way. All the muscles are there and observed closely, from the pectorals to the lats to the calf muscles. Everything is here. Yet this sculpture still seems awkward. It still seems strange. It still seems underdeveloped. Why? Because of the way it's moving. This is a guy who's dying, but his body feels like he's posing, like he's doing a centerfold or something. He's sort of spread out, and also every single muscle of his body is flexed equally. So it's not only the awkward sort of upright position of his body that feels posed, it is the way he is flexing every muscle equally that makes this feel posed. And this is not the way the human body normally works. If you're moving, one muscle will be engaged and the other muscle will be disengaged. One will be flexed and one will be soft. But with him, every single muscle is flexed, giving us this very posed, unnatural, awkward look. And on top of that, we have this face, which in no way is expressing the appropriate emotion. In fact, it seems like it's almost come from a different sculpture entirely. He's dying, but his face is... I can't help but think that every time I see the archaic smile, I think of that goofy sound. So there is still some stylization, we would say. There is still some um, what's the word I'm looking for, guys? Some abstraction here, in the face especially. But if we look down here and we look 10 years later, we see something completely different. We see the same subject matter. We see a soldier. He is dying. But he feels like he's dying. Why does he feel like he's dying? Well, first of all, the position of the body in the movement. He is falling forward as a wounded man would. His body isn't posed, but parts of his body, like his arm, for instance, are bracing himself against the ground as a dying man would. So he's moving and he's posed in a way that seems a lot more naturalistic. But also, and this is the key, it's how his muscles are moving, or the fact that they are moving, is also makes this realistic. Look at this, his left arm here, and look how his bicep is bulging, it's flexed, but his tricep is disengaged. And you can see that throughout his body, this sort of give and take, this natural kind of engaged and disengaged quality that muscles take on when they move. If we also look at his face, we see more of a grimace than a smile. We see a feeling of pain in this soldier's face. And so this gives us something that is much more realistic, that is much more lifelike. Yes, the top statue is just as anatomically correct and naturalistic as the bottom statue, but this guy feels so much more lifelike. But the Greeks developed this naturalistic style not just because it looked better or it looked more real or it looked cool, but they also developed it because they were humanist. We can't forget this word. And for them, human behavior, human desire, human stories, humanity itself is central. This is why they loved the nude figure, because it showed off the human body, which they thought was perfect. But here we're moving beyond the physical and we're moving into the emotional and the psychological. The Greeks didn't just want to tell the story of the Trojan War and show us that a lot of soldiers died. They want to show us what it was like on the battlefield. They want us to sympathize and empathize with the ordeal that these people went through. They humanize these soldiers. And so, while yes, the anatomy looks amazing, yes, the ability to flex all of these muscles shows the artist was really looking and observing at the human body, but it also helps tell the story. And the story is one of the struggle against the certainty of death. And this is a purely sort of human endeavor. This desire we have to overcome death, to fight against death with every moment and every ounce of our being. Because this soldier is pressing against the ground with his arm. He is wounded. He is dying. This brave, proud, strong soldier has been wounded and he's hit the ground. But he is using every last ounce of his energy to survive, to struggle, to fight against that impending doom he knows that he cannot escape. But it doesn't matter that he can't escape it, because the human thing to do is to fight against it. And that is exactly what he's doing. And with this arm, this bulging bicep here, he's not simply flexing his muscles to show us how much he's been hitting the gym, but instead he is bracing himself against that shield. Once again, this muscle is showing the struggle he is having mentally and emotionally and philosophically, as well as his physical struggles. He's not simply lying there and sort of taking it, letting death come to him, smiling goofily into the abyss, but he is fighting with every single ounce of power that he has left in his body. And that, my friends, is humanism. That is what the Greeks did that nobody else did before, was to take these stories and make them personal, make them individual, because humanism is about individuality. And so we're looking at one singular person here struggling against death in a realistic, in a naturalistic way that had never been done before. And that is the incredible nature of Greek art. And that is what you are witnessing here, is this amazing moment in history where we go from black and white to color television, right? Where we go from reading about something to living it, right? This is a seminal moment in the history of art. Instead of a picture of something, we're seeing a picture about the interior qualities of the human heart and the human soul and the human mind. That is humanism, and that's what the Greeks did, and that is what is happening here.